A sports card influencer has been caught shill bidding on their own cards. This is a pretty wild story because the number of people that have come out and condone this kind of behavior has left me a little bit shocked. And one of those people is someone that is very, very prominent within this industry and has forms supporting scammers and trimmers. So I'm going to take you, through that just after I quickly talk you through the shill bidding situation itself. Now, as you can see on screen, Shaiway Vlogs was essentially caught shill bidding on his own cards. You can read all the detail here in this blowout thread that I'll put down below, but essentially people figured out that he won some cards, he then consigned them, and then the same account that he won them with was bidding up these items, which is a big no-no. I'm 99.9% certain that this goes against eBay's T's and C's and is essentially considered a big hobby no-no. It's essentially considered unethical within this hobby, right? And he tried to come out and defend what he was doing initially, but then came out and said, you know what, you guys are right, I shouldn't have done this. Now, in my live the other day, I mentioned that I wouldn't be talking to this because there was really nothing to gain. The guy came out, got caught, he admitted to it, he had sponsorships cut and all that sort of stuff. So I was like, what's the outcome from me talking to this other than this guy getting more hate? But the reason why I want to talk to it is the number of people that have supported this kind of behavior, which should concern you, right? If you're somebody that's doing things the right way, the number of people that think shill bidding like this is an okay thing to do, i.e. bid on your own cards, is a little bit scary. Now, just quickly here, I'll show you that, Empire Sports Cards and Fun Your Cards, who was somebody that he worked for, has essentially ceased partnership with him. He no longer works for them. And then you can see over here his apology. It's just a bit of a wild situation because from his perspective, he was saying, well, I'm intending to pay. What's the big deal? Well, the big deal is that it's against eBay's T's and C's and it's not, an ethical thing to do. What was a bit funny was that Shay was trying to defend his actions by pointing to a Jeremy Lee podcast that he did with DPZ a few months ago where they talked about shill bidding. And one of the things that Jeremy talked to was, well, if I've got, 9 of the 10 gold cards for a specific player and I want to buy the 10th because I want to corner in the market, right? He didn't use his exact example. I'm just talking, verbatim through him. If I bid up that card, is that shill bidding? And obviously that's not shill bidding, right? That's you trying to corner a market, trying to own as many cards. It's really only considered shill bidding when you're doing it to your own cards or you're doing it to a friend's cards with the intent to push the price up, right? With the intent to protect the price. And then when it comes to your own cards, it's considered shill bidding irrespective of whether you intend to pay or not, because it's almost like an unethical thing to do. But what was pretty wild is that you had people like Prism God come out and say that he really didn't think anything was wrong with this. Now, Prism God is an influential person in this space. He's one of the people that was caught within the fake content with DAP Sports and the curator of Mojo Sports. He's also somebody that's come out and said some very dumb things when it came to the Evan Mathis trimming situation as well. But what Prism God came out and said was, I just caught on to what the Shaiway Vlogs convo is. So what you're saying is, I'm talking verbatim here, but you can read for yourself. If your card is on the open market, whether you're the current owner or new owner, you can't buy it back at a reduced value. And it was just shocking to me that this guy would come out and say that, right? It's pretty obvious, right? You can't bid on your own cards. And there is a ton more people when you check out the comment sections of all the things that this, topic was discussed on. People were basically saying the same thing. It's just wild to me how you've got people coming out and saying stuff like this. So that tells me, okay, well, what are they doing that they're not telling us, right? I've talked this before. When you've got people coming out and telling you what they're doing, well, what are they not telling us, right? People are very secretive for the most part. So does that mean Prism God has bid on his own cards before because he wants to protect the price or he thinks it's selling too low? Like you can't do that irrespective of whether you want to pay for it or not. And even if you say you want to pay for it, if you're into a card for $5,000 and it sells for $2,000 and then you're the winning bidder at $2,000, that card's now costing you $7,000. Do you really think that person is actually going to pay for it when you're in the hole for the $5,000 already? Like that stuff is really hard to believe. I'm shocked that people are saying this stuff's okay. And to give you some more context on Prism God, this is the same guy that we spoke to when it came to this Evan Mathis trimming video, because he made the comment, and I talked to this in the video, where he said legendary. And then people, myself and others, basically came out and said, well, what is so freaking legendary about this? And then he came out and said, well, I think he's just explaining what's been going on. He then says the fact he's educating people on a space that was never put in the forefront. He then talks to a little bit later on saying, well, I didn't really see what was happening. I just commented, right? But if you sort of take a step back and take this at face value, he's saying a guy trimming a card is legendary. He's saying that it's okay for people to trim cards. Now, maybe he didn't mean what he said in the context that he did. Maybe he didn't mean it this way. Maybe he was specifically referring to just people, what I explained a bit earlier, trying to get all the gold prisms for a specific player to try and corner the market. maybe that's what he was referring to, but on face value, that's not a good look. And it's just wild to me that there are still people out there in this day and age doing stuff like this. It seems to be more and more prevalent than it has been in the past. I've talked this before as well, where you've got people that are sort of, trying to squeeze every drop of money out of this hobby as they can, right? They're trying to bleed it as dry as possible. And that goes to things like Kurt's Card Care becoming mainstream amongst many, many other things, right? And all the, flipping between graders to try and get half a grade more to try and sell a card for a little bit more money, right? This stuff is happening, left, right, and center. And it's just wild to me how it seems to be becoming more and more common, because that concerns me, down the line. It looks like it's very much a me and self-interested focus, right? It's all about people trying to maximize the amount of money. The whole trimming thing from, Evan Mathis is another clear-cut example of the number of people that said that stuff was okay. You've then got Prism God saying, well, what's the big deal? But I guarantee you, he's been angry in the past about people that have shill bid on cards that he has actually won himself. It's like, it's all fine and dandy to say, it's okay because I intend to pay. But then when the shoe's on the other foot, right, it's a different story. And it's just crazy to me. And I don't want to shit on Prism God, but it goes to what I've always talked to, right, where you've got, people in these positions where they have a lot of influence, they run card shows, which I believe Prism God does. He does a lot of really good content with, bigger accounts like Talon Sports Cards, Mojo Sports, Dap Sports, who's a fake account because he buys all his followers, but many others that I can't think of right now. So this guy's getting, access to all these, businesses within the hobby is at the forefront, and yet he's coming out and saying stuff like that, right? You've got people elevated to a position in this space that maybe don't know a whole lot about cards, or they don't know a whole lot about ethics, and they're saying all this sort of stuff, and either are saying it because they're shit people, right? And I know that's an unfair thing to say, but they're saying it for that reason. They're saying it because they're trying to deceive people, or they're saying it because they don't actually understand the impact that their voice has, which is not meant to cut them some slack, right? That's unacceptable. But it's just crazy to me that you've had someone like him come out and say that, right? And to bring it up on screen again is essentially saying, what's the big deal? If you can buy it back at a reduced price, what's the big deal? Like, the big deal is that it's unethical. You can't bid on your own cards. It goes against eBay's T's and C's. It goes against the T's and C's of, I want to say, every single auction house that I can think of. It is unethical. It's not condoned by those auction houses for a specific reason. Because people, when they win their own cards, they don't pay. So it's just pretty wild to me that he's come out and said that. And like I said, with the whole Shay situation, he got caught. He has to now deal with the consequences and ramifications for his actions. His days in the hobby are not numbered, because you can still collect cards and have fun, but he's going to have a bloody hard time getting to the same level of influence that he had, right? The hobby has a short memory, but something like shill bidding is unacceptable, because I'm fairly certain it's considered fraud in some states as well. So it is what it is. Keen to get your thoughts on this down in the comments below. I'm keen to get your thoughts on whether you think it's okay to bid on your own cards or not. I think it is completely unacceptable. It is unethical. And there's a reason why it's gotten to that point, because, 9 times out of 10, the person that's bidding on their own cards is doing so to push the price up, to i.e. make more money, and will likely not pay for the card when they do in fact win it themselves, right? If you want to bid on your own card and win it and pay for it, sure, you can do whatever the heck you want, but just understand that it's not considered ethical. It goes against T's and C's. It's probably considered fraud in a few places around the world. So it is what it is. I just thought Prism God stuff was shocking to me. That's the main reason why I made this video, because it's another dumb take from this guy, right? And I don't like crapping on people, but to come out and say it's okay and be the same guy that said Evan Mathis trimming video was legendary, again, tells me all I need to know about you, which is a really unfortunate thing to say. So it is what it is. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.